I'm delighted to be joined today by the team from JSR Farms. So I'd love to welcome onto the screen Tim Rymer, who's the Chief Executive for JSR Farms, and Stephen Waite, who's the Managing Director for the Pigs and Genetics Division, and also Ahan, who's the Group IT Manager. So welcome, guys, and thanks for joining the session today. I'd just like to start with you, Tim. Tell us a little bit about JSR Farms and what you guys do.
Yes, we're an integrated mixed farming business based in East Yorkshire. We've been around for 60 years and we have a turnover of 30 million. We're mixed in the sense that we grow crops and we have animals. We also sell added value breeding stock to other farmers all over the world.
That's great, Tim. And can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on within the business?
Yeah, like all businesses, we're gathering more and more data, and we have found it more difficult to analyse that data in a user-friendly manner. And about 2 years ago now, I was with a group of farmers and we were discussing the same problem. And somebody who was not a farmer as such, who's actually a tomato grower, said, "Have you tried Qlik for analysing your data?" And I wrote it down, came home, and about a week later, I think, Mike, you and I had a conversation.
Yeah, and I remember it well, Tim. And I guess at that time, can you sort of share with us some of the frustrations that you were having and what you were looking to change?
A lot of it was born out of frustration. Traditionally, data has been owned by finance. They are the purveyors of all information, and we have to go and knock on their door and say, can we have some analysis? And I wanted to get the data into the operational side so that the operational people who know the questions to ask could actually do it themselves without being reliant on the data from the finance team. And the finance team has a traditional way of reporting data, which isn't very user-friendly. It's accurate, it's timely, but not always user-friendly. And Qlik is user-friendly. And so if the information that you're putting in front of non-financial managers is not user-friendly, they glaze over very quickly indeed, and you've lost them, and therefore you can't have the discussion. What I saw with Qlik was the ability of getting the data from the back room to the front room and get those operational guys out there who are close to the activities, who are making the decisions, saying, let's analyse this. What are we doing here? How can we make changes?
Probably one thing's important, and I think it's probably the same in a lot of companies. There's a lot of things you know in a company, but you just can't prove. Everyone's got that feeling that in our thing in the arable business, that field is worse than that field. If you asked any member of staff, they'd tell you that, but there's no tangible way of proving it in the numbers because the numbers are so unwieldy. What Qlik's has allowed us to do is put them together, compare them side by side, and you can literally look at it and go, yes, that is worse than that. And that is quite powerful, really. So then you can make decisions on, do we continue to lease that land? Do we look at selling that land? Things like that. So you've got other uses which Qlik then allow you to look into.
Yeah, and I think things have certainly changed from the days of when I was a young farmer, Stephen. And I guess the key here is really looking at the detail and trying to understand, how feed converts into yields. So just tell me a little bit more about what you've been doing with Qlik in that area.
Traditionally, and everybody who is farming crops at the moment would chime with this, is that there's quite a lot of software out there for measuring the cost of seed, sprays and fertilizers. And I think when they wrote the program, they just forgot about reporting. And so it churns out all these columns of figures, which mean nothing to anybody unless you're prepared to study them in a lot of detail. So, we've got an app now that does that, and it's providing a lot of good business insight into the crop part of the business.
And has that brought a shift in people's comfort zone around using information more effectively within the business?
I'd definitely say so, yes, because it makes what looks on the face of it incredibly complex data incredibly easy to use. And if it allows you to sort of ask a question. So if you say, okay, this has been great. Our performance over last month was great, but actually, has it been our best month ever? That kind of answer you can get. Whereas in the past, you'd have to go through a myriad of other spreadsheets, which were saved in monthly intervals, and try and find the best month and say, do we compare against it? So for that, you can sort of answer a question within a meeting, where normally that would have generated a minute in that meeting for somebody to go off and do, and then work from that way onwards. So Qlik's been really valuable in that respect.
And I guess just bringing that back to you, Tim, has that allowed you to be a little bit more challenging, or just to really get to understand the underlying issues within the business more effectively?
Yeah, it's all about turning all this data into knowledge, and we can make decisions about it. So now our quarterly board meetings, yes, we look at the traditional balance sheet and profit and loss and cash flow, but the managing directors, like Stephen, will do their report through Qlik, and it makes so much more of an interactive meeting, with the non-executive directors being able to ask questions, and then Stephen be able to answer them there and then, without having to go back and say, I'll get back to you in 3 days.
And Stephen, just from your side of things, does that excite you then, the board meetings, now that you can actually, have the information at your fingertips, opposed to having reams of paper or however it used to be?
It depends what subjects you're talking about. Sometimes it's not necessarily always positive, but to be able to get that answer almost in real time is really, really important. Because, like Tim said, in those environments where you're having a board meeting with non-exec directors, they're interested because they're in the moment, and to be able to answer the question in the moment is almost as valuable as the answer to the question, because then you can steer the conversation into somewhere more useful beyond that point as well. Whereas in the old way, you're quite fragmented because of essentially having to go back and interrogate a spreadsheet a couple of days later, and everyone slept on it and they've got different views. So no, it's quite important.
Yeah, no, that sounds very much like it. And Ahan, here's one for you. So in terms of the systems that were in the business and are currently in the business, how many could you access easily prior to this, and where have you found that sort of data strategy moving?
Well, one of the things that it made it easier for us is that the Qlik has variable, being compatible with different data sources. So what that means then we can pull all the information into Qlik and then manipulate it from there onwards. But one of the things that we found challenging is that when a piece of report has been requested, let's say from farm, the database coordinator had to sort of spend maybe a few hours on it to be able to either help with the reconcile with a piece of information, or to be able to help with the reporting. And as Stephen pointed out, is when a question that came up in the board meeting, sometimes if it's not the spreadsheet that they had to sort of refer to, it will be a piece of database that we have to dig out the information so they can answer it back and feed it back to the board again.
So I guess that ability to drive that single version of the information has been really important. How has that changed the way that you're preparing information now, Ahan?
The information is already there because it's live, and we don't have to sort of do anything extra because it's already been done. So what that means that we can sort of use the time of IT to focus on more strategic areas, rather than try and back up a piece of information that management is trying to get hold of.
And Stephen, anything from you?
Well, I think one thing which is important to note as well is the fact that Qlik brings in all of the data you're looking at. And as you're going forward and filtering, this is more like in a live situation, it also, Qlik shows you what it isn't showing you, if that makes sense, by highlighting the data which is now exempt to what you're trying to look at. And sometimes that's quite useful, because in the past, when you're navigating spreadsheets or just purely navigating databases, it's easy to exclude something which might actually be useful. And especially in the farming industry, people being technologically savvy doesn't necessarily go hand in hand. So if you were naming a farm, they might have the name right, but it's not got a capitalized letter at the start. So if you're doing traditional searches on traditional databases, they are suddenly excluded, whereas Qlik will actually show you, hang on a minute, there's something related to what you're searching with. Yes, it isn't exactly in your search parameters, but you should probably keep it in there. And that's very, very powerful, especially in the farming arena.
That's great to hear, and I think the detail is quite apparent. And I guess, in terms of using it in real time in board meetings, how have you also started to translate that into other areas of the business?
We're also a sales company, much like yourself, so we sell genetic products to other people. So when we're in that arena, and generally in the pig industry, we talk about our income versus a load. So we send a load of pigs away. So everyone talks about loads, whereas we can display data, which is all of our animals. So most people talk about animals in groups of 200. We can talk about them currently in 600,000. So it's a big step change. And the fact that that data is there for you instantly, you can sort of answer any of your customer questions pretty much right on the number, but with exactly what they asked. And that's quite the powerful bit. In the past, when you had the sales team going out, they would have a table of information, but if the customer's question is not quite on that, then it's no use to you. But then if they say, right, what was your performance over this particularly hot period of weather? Well, when was that? And they give you the dates. Well, that was our performance. So you can see we weren't really affected. It's a very powerful tool. It's hard to understand what value it gives you, but I think your customer then is a bit more comfortable in you because they realize that this data is true data. You aren't just making it up. It's just giving them a sound like window into your business. So I think on the sales side, it has helped us.
And is that the same in terms of, the supply community as well, or is it more on the customer side?
Well, we have used this with the supply community just to show trends which they probably should know about us, but don't. But we can go back to them and say, hang on a minute, this is what our relationship looks like in numbers, which is actually quite powerful, whether it's coming to negotiations or even just tweaking efficiencies in your relationship going forward.
Yeah, that is very powerful. And how have you also started to use that with the customers that you're speaking to?
Yeah, so we have a boar semen centre up in the north of England, and they're providing semen to our customers all over the country, in fact internationally as well. And we have an app that allows the manager there to analyse a lot of data that she wasn't able to analyse before.
Before, a lot of the data relating to the semen business was centralized in the office, but these sites are quite remote. So now the process manager there can see such things as live orders coming in, order trends in the past. It also allows us to probably give a better service to our customer. So such things we get highlighted now if a customer has missed an order, which does happen. Sometimes it can forget and somebody's mind slips. So she can get a live update of that, and we can actually proactively contact the customer to say, actually, your order has come in or not come in. Does it need to be changed? Does it need to be looked at in a different way? So it allows us to actually have probably more data access at the coalface where the decisions need to be made in quite quick time to actually be able to do that.
And from your side of things, Stephen, I mean, how was it to pick up Qlik? How did you find sort of that learning curve?
Reasonably easy to get like a good enough grasp to make an app which is useful. So I can use Excel reasonably well. So essentially all of my Excel knowledge kind of fell into Qlik quite well. The database side has been something which you've had to learn, but the fact that you can sort of start off by feeding it an Excel spreadsheet which already exists and then build an app from that kind of gets you to learn your way around it. And also with Qlik having such a big online presence, there's very rarely a problem which isn't a Google search away from somebody else who've already kind of done the same problem as you. So you can copy and paste it into your script. And then that little checker at the bottom that says it's okay generally makes you feel okay with the world again.
No, and the community is great for that. It really helps you to find the right answers. But I guess as well, how important is it to have the right partner working alongside you?
I think really when you're looking at Qlik on a business sense, the biggest hurdle you've got to start with in the whole Qlik project isn't actually making apps or thinking where your data comes from. It's getting that initial step of somebody essentially putting some of your data together into a Qlik app for you to show you how well it works. And I remember the first time Catalyst came to us, we basically gave them the behemoth of all of our pig data and said, please make us something interesting. And what they came with was even better than we thought we could have got, if that made sense. And that shows you then, hell, this thing is actually quite a powerful tool and probably gave us the need and want within ourselves to actually try and put a lot of effort into this, because I think a lot of it is the starting of it. the relationship is the hardest bit. Making the decision, right, we're going to use Qlik, but then that doesn't tell you how you're going to use Qlik. And that's where the value of like an intermediary like Catalyst has come in, because they've really shown us, A, what we can do with it, been there to help us to do it in the first instance, and then been there to support the things we've done ourselves. So it's not just them saying, yes, you can make an app, but we prefer to send you all the support and we'll do them all for you. They've kind of given us the ability to walk by ourselves using this software, and that's probably been quite vital to us.
The support that we've had from you, and in particular from one of your colleagues, Ben, in any industry, there's a lot of jargon, a lot of acronyms, and I've been really impressed at how Ben has been able to understand the acronyms and the jargon very quickly and actually start using it as we talk and design apps and things. And I think, that's been really important, because very often you may have somebody who comes in who doesn't really understand what you're talking about, and he does, and therefore we get to the heart of the matter very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's really valuable when you work with consultants or when you work in partnership that the team that are around the table have a really vested interest in what you're doing as customers, and also what we're doing as kind of thought leaders in that space. And that in that way you can aspire to continue to push the boundaries a bit. And I guess on that note, I mean, are you able to put your finger on sort of percentage benefits, benchmark increases, performance changes, things that have said, things that you're happy to share with us around either yields or various different statistics that have started to impact the business as a result of seeing all of this intelligence and knowledge?
For any CEO, if you've got some dirt in the business, you want it on the top of the table, not underneath. And Qlik allows us to get that data at the top of the table for us all to discuss. So there's a big cultural change. People are much more confident because we've got the data analysed at our fingertips. And I think on the livestock side, we've got better efficiency, but not at the expense of welfare. We're better farmers as a result, because we're now being able to get the attention to detail that traditionally small farmers had.
Okay, I guess probably coming onto the home straight a little bit here then. So question for you then, Tim, in terms of thinking about the future use of the solution and things that you might want to do with it. What's next on the horizon?
What it will allow us to do, because we've got the data, is be able to choose not just individual fields, but areas of fields which are less productive, and we can put into something more suitable, like environmental crops, nectar mixes for bees and honeybees and things like that. So we can actually target the areas that are very productive for growing crops, and those areas that are less productive we will put to environmental crops.
No, that's really, really impressive. And Stephen, from your side of the business as well, what's the kind of next steps in the future looking like?
So recently, in the latest buildings we've put forward, we've got cooling systems in there. So we've always been pretty good at keeping animals warm in winter, but nobody's ever thought that UK gets warm enough to justify cooling them in summer. But we can use this now. So the cooling system outputs data, so we can directly compare external temperature to internal temperature and see how reactive the building is. Because like with this business, that the welfare of animals is first and foremost, because if you got that welfare right, you generally get performance right. They go hand in hand for the business. So being able to look at things like this and actually probably in the future build larger Qlik apps which pull off many different databases just focused on like a headline subject such as welfare. We could essentially have a welfare KPI app which looks across the business. So there's always more development to be done here. So once we've got the understanding of where the key data comes from and how to store it, we can then view and make it larger.
And Ahan, I'm going to ask you the same question just around the sort of future use and obviously understanding what's capable within the solution, and then I'll bring it back to Tim for a bit of a wrap-up type question. So Ahan, in terms of the future and your use cases that you see within the organisation, how are you going to support the business going forward?
The main thing is any other new system coming in, now Qlik being the driver's side of it, saying, okay, is it going to be compatible with Qlik? Or can we have this extra API or extra link to the database so we can utilize Qlik to report on this new infrastructure we are implementing, basically.
Fantastic. And Tim, predictive capability and sort of thinking about, what happens with the weather. And I know that you'll often tell me that when I come in and see you, it's been the wettest 2 hours of last Saturday that's ever been in the previous 3 years, which I always find brilliant, because I can remember playing rugby in it a lot. But you're really on top of that, and that's really exciting for anybody, I guess, that comes into your business. How do you feel your leadership style has changed as a result of getting hold of this information?
Probably the best way to answer that would be that if you took Qlik away from us and said it's no more, we would have a problem in various parts of the business in being able to make quick decisions, because it's become so integral to how we operate. It's part and parcel of the way we work now. Once we never had forklifts. We used to carry everything on our backs in farming, and now we have forklifts. And people often say, how do we ever manage without forklifts? Well, I think we all had bad backs instead. But I feel the same about Qlik. How do we ever manage without Qlik?
Well, Tim, I think that says it all. I've never heard Qlik likened to managing without forklifts in the past, but I think it just conjures up the amount of work that you've put into using the solution within the business and the impact that it's had on your organization. So I think, without saying any much more, that's just a great way to end the session today. So I'd like to thank Tim, Stephen and Ahan for their contribution, and wish you all the success in the future, guys. And thank you very much for joining the session today.